It is genuinely hard to overstate what Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 accomplished when it dropped. It didn't just recapture a moment in time, it redefined what a remaster could be. So when 3 and 4 was announced, expectations were high. Like, unreasonably high. After all, THPS 3 is widely considered peak Tony Hawk. In THPS 4 was where the series took the first steps towards reinvention. So, how does Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, the remake, stack up? After 100% completing everything, every goal, every stat point, every gap, every new level and every new challenge, I can confidently say this is a game of two halves. One of them nearly flawless and the other deeply conflicted. But as a package, it's still an extraordinary celebration of one of gaming's most iconic franchises. And for completionists, it's one hell of a ride. Let's start with the good news. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 is incredible. The level design, the pacing, the trick flow, it's all exactly as you remember. Only sharper, faster and more responsive. The visual overhaul is clean and confident. The lighting alone breathes life into levels like Airport and Suburbia, while Foundry's Molten Steel set piece looks downright cinematic. Controls are pitch perfect. There's this dance to THPS gameplay that's hard to describe if you haven't experienced it. Chaining grinds into reverts, into manuals, into transfers, watching that score counter balloon as your brain enters a kind of flow state is the name of the game. It's a purity of movement that only the best arcade games can achieve, and THPS 3 is still the blueprint. Every objective has been retained. Secret tapes, skate, stat points, high scores, gaps, you name it. There's no bloat here, no artificial padding, just perfectly tuned challenges that force you to lean into the levels, really lean into them, until you're carving them up like a master. And if you're like me and chasing 100%, that process becomes a kind of ritual. It's not about ticking boxes, it's all about fluency, about turning chaos into choreography. And the kicker, the game still surprises you. Even after dozens of hours, I was still discovering new lines, new trick routes, hidden transfers that connect parts of levels that I never thought would link together, and that isn't nostalgia. This is damn good design. This game does not play around when it comes to completionist depth. If you think you're gonna just pick this up casually and collect every stat point, clear a few goals, think again. Every skater has their own progression bar. Every level must be completed separately for every skater, encouraging you to play with every single character, not only your one favorite and then subsequently calling it a day. It dares you to master its systems across the board, and that's where the real joy of completion lies. Some goals demand near perfect execution. You'll be expected to chain together 200,000 point combos across awkwardly laid out maps, collect obscure items mid-combo, and land on tiny rails with pixel-perfect timing. You'll need to manually reassign stat points between runs to optimize for balance versus air versus speed. You'll rebuild your own moveset constantly, depending on the objective. And yes, some of it gets hard, like rage at the controller hard. But here's the thing, when you finally land that impossible combo, hit that final gap, or check off that last stat point, it feels incredible, not just because it's done, but because you've earned it. And with the added layer of online leaderboards and new custom goals, you're constantly aware of how good you aren't, which is somehow incredibly motivating. You don't just want to finish, you want to master. What I wasn't expecting is how good the new content was going to be. Vicarious Visions, or rather the remnants of the team now buried somewhere within Activision's development Hydra, clearly understood the tone, flow and personality of classic Tony Hawk design. There are 3 entirely new levels, Water Park, Pinball and Movie Studio, and each of them feel like they could have been in the original lineup. Water Park is a standout. It's fantastic verticality, tons of flow, and some of the best hidden gaps in the entire game. Whereas Pinball's chaotic layout forces you to rethink traditional lines. Movie Studio, on the other hand, is a bit more gimmicky, but still fun to crack open. These levels aren't just visual showcases though, they're mechanically rich, they demand mastery, just like the classic maps. And from a 100% perspective, they add serious value. Brand new goals, unique geometry, additional challenges. These brand new levels are fully realized additions to the roster, and they deserve to be talked about alongside the originals. If you're someone who enjoys flexing their creative muscles, the Creator Path feature has also been substantially upgraded. It's still a bit clunky, and there's no mistaking it for a fully fledged level editor or anything, but it's robust enough to build complex, satisfying parks with multi-tier trick lines and legit challenge goals. The real surprise is how well the Creator Goal system has been integrated. Players can now set up their own objectives in custom parks, and I found myself not only creating new challenges but also downloading others from the community, some of which were generally more creative and punishing than the base game's own goals. For completionists, this creates an endless treadmill of optional content. Even after hitting 100% in the base game, there's always something new to chase, and that is value. And then there's Pro Skater 4. Okay, let's talk about this. THPS 4 was always a black sheep. It was the transition point from the classic arcade-style format to something more open or sandboxy. It ditched the 2-minute timers and gave players space to roam, talk to NPCs, and unlock challenges organically. It was a decisive shift, but for many, including myself, it marked a bold new direction for the franchise. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 kind of erases all of that. Instead of preserving THPS 4's open world structure, the remaster restructures every level to follow the classic 2-minute format. That's right, no NPCs, no triggered goals, no open world or open-ended pacing. Everything's dumped into your objective list from the get-go, and you're expected to check them off like the old-fashioned way. Now, if you never liked THPS originally to start off with, then these changes might actually be welcomed ones. But from a historical and design perspective, it's a huge loss. These levels weren't built for timers, they were built to breathe, to discover, not sprinting through. Levels like Alcatraz, London, and College deserve their original format. Reducing them to a bite-sized score run strips away their identity completely. It's like putting a jet engine on a kayak. Sure, it still moves, but you fundamentally changed what it's supposed to be. And that affects the 100% experience for me. Goals that were designed to be contextual, tied to exploration and gradual skill development now feel rushed and awkward. You're still being challenged, but not in the way the game originally intended. It's not bad per se, but it's not faithful, and that makes it hard to recommend. THPS in this form without some heavy caveats is just something that feels odd. And I don't want to start to sound a little bit overly negative here, but let's just rip this band-aid off. The soundtrack isn't complete. This is always going to be a licensing nightmare, and I don't fault the devs for failing to secure every single track. But let's not pretend this isn't a big deal. THPS isn't about skateboarding, it's about attitude, and that attitude was always driven by the music. In THPS 3 and 4, the soundtrack was the soul of the experience. Rage Against the Machine, Motorhead, AC/DC, Goldfinger. These tracks weren't just background noise, they were inseparable parts of the gameplay experience. In this remaster, many of those classics are gone. Some solid modern replacements are there in their place, and the curated selection still holds up, but that raw, youthful energy that defined the original feels diluted. Like someone replaced your childhood mixtape with a Spotify algorithm. Competent but sterile. You can substitute tracks manually if you're on PC, but that's not a solution, it's a workaround. Technically speaking, the game is flawless. It runs at a locked 60 frames per second even on base consoles and looks great doing it. Character models are detailed and expressive. Level geometry has been subtly modernized to remove jank without betraying the original. Lightning effects are tasteful, stylized without being garish. Load times are quick, crashes are non-existent, and I didn't encounter a single bug across my 100% run, and that is extremely rare in any modern release, let alone a game as mechanically demanding as this one. And that is without a doubt something that Vicarious Visions need to be applauded for. So in conclusion, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 is an exceptional package, but it's certainly not perfect. THPS 3 is restored to its former glory, and then some. Every trick, every gap, every goal is a love letter to the golden era of arcade sport games. New content adds meaningful depth, and for completionists, this is an absolute treasure trove of rewarding skill-based challenge. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, meanwhile, is more of a curiosity. Still worth playing, still mechanically sharp, but compromised in its structure. If you never clicked with its original open world design, this rework might actually be preferable. But if you love THPS 4 for its ambition and its breathability, this remaster may come as a disappointment. Still, judged as a whole, this is one of the most mechanically polished, content-rich, and satisfying skateboarding games ever made. It honors the legacy of the franchise while offering enough new twists to make it more than just a nostalgia trip. For anyone chasing 100%, this is a gauntlet worth running. You'll rage, you'll fail, you'll learn. And then when it all clicks, you'll remember exactly why this series mattered in the first place.